Hello, people. Finished a book. Richard Wagner, The Man, His Mind, and His Music. And what a mind it was. Capable of what I consider some of the best music ever written. And also capable of wanting the Jews to be exterminated. He, I've never run into somebody that epitomizes the dichotomous nature of man. It was Wagner. There wasn't just the anti-Semite thing. He was a dick to his first wife, Mina. What a dick he was to her. He borrowed money from people, never paid it back. He even sold the rights to his music, like, to 4 different people. If it wasn't for Ludwig II, the Mad King of Bavaria, Wagner would have been fucked. He would have been in debtor's prison. So it was a 455-page book. This took me weeks to finish. Literally weeks. Part of it was because I had to go back to work. I ran out of money. I got in a jam with fucking IRS. Taxes on the fucking house. So I literally ran out of money. I've done this before where I ran out of money. But let's get to this because I got a lot of notes in here. This wasn't a bad author. It's just I was in a little bit over my head with this book. That's another reason why it took me weeks to finish. You need to be like a professor of music to understand a lot of this book. You also needed to have a pretty thorough knowledge of all of Wagner's operas. I've seen 2 of them. Back when I was a kid, I was probably 23 years old. I went to see Lohengrin with the woman that is now my wife in a 1970 T-Bird. We parked right in front of Masonic Temple. It was a fantastic night. Really went just to see, or just to hear, Prelude to Act 3. And then a couple of years ago, I saw The Flying Dutchman. Flying Dutchman didn't impress me very much. I have a note here that just says, Poodle. He was an animal lover. And there's a little bit more on that later. Wagner's first marriage, money troubles. The money troubles go throughout the whole book. And I've got here the second paragraph, so I'll read it. On November 24th, 1836, they were married. Mina's attire was selected by Richard. In parentheses here it says, over 4 decades later, he would steal time from work on Parsifal to choose gowns with matching shoes for Cosima, Cosima is the woman that he cheated on Mina with. Cosima was also married to this von Bülow character who supplied Wagner with money. He used people. He stepped on this von Bülow guy. He was encouraged by the pastor's assurance that an unknown friend would remedy whatever trials might lie ahead. Another Apel was what Richard needed. I don't know. Didn't seem like a very important paragraph. I don't know why I marked that. Lots of notes, so stick with me. Just here, they're calling Dresden the Florence on the Elbe. And as we all know, Dresden was totally destroyed by Allied firebombing in the Second World War. Wagner, the author, and I've written underneath there probably crap. He wrote quite a bit of stuff. He wrote pamphlets, he wrote columns, he wrote books. One of them was called Jewry in Music. Wagner. Wagner stays in London for a little while. He hates London. He's in London because in his native Saxony, he's going to get thrown in jail for owing money. And this is what he says about London. The misery I feel in having to live in these disgusting surroundings is beyond description. uh, he meets Queen Victoria, meets Prince Albert. Prince Albert is still alive. Oh, yeah. He just uses people, and his first wife Mina especially. He starts fucking Cosima, and then him and Mina live apart, and he assures Mina that she better have a spare room on her house, because he's gonna visit often. He only visits once. Let me make sure. Oh yeah, he visits once, and he questions and explanations were skillfully avoided, for they usually found themselves in the company of others. Only at his departure did the anguished wife, sensing that little time was left her, break down and voice a fear that she would never see him again. In fact, it was their last meeting, their final parting. A lot of good pictures in here. None of his wives were very attractive. I've got the last sentence. Oh yeah, this is just to give you an idea of how the book is written. Lots of references here that I did not understand. One wanders in a world of calculated eccentricities, indirections, and seeming irrationalities, where repressed underplaying may immediately follow hysterical over-response, where the spectator's call for clarity is overwhelmed by the intensity of the immediate emotion, where the resolution of shifting dissonance is endlessly postponed, where mystic forces propel neurotic protagonists through settings to which they seem strangely unrelated. Actually, it's a good author. I never once thought I would just give this up, this book. Aesthetic change of heart. Wagner would never flee again. His days as wanderer were past. Over the years he had roamed the world, his drooping cap set against the storm. Such is wanderer's fashion when he goes counter to the wind, wanderer Wotan explained to a puzzled Siegfried, questioning his taste in millinery. As war-weary guest, he had sought shelter at many strange hearths, paying for his stay by lecturing. Companionably I rested with good folk. Many gave me gifts. Thus did the god describe his social success of the past as he forced his way into Mime's rocky living room, despite the latter's protests, and much like Wagner in Otto Wessendonk's parlor, went about rearranging the life of an unwilling host. Unbidden, the wanderer seated himself majestically before Mime's fire, and compelled him to enter a contest of words upon which his life depended. So had the tempest-driven, desperate Wagner often inflicted his overpowering personality on those he desired to use. The game over, he, like Wotan, left them to their fate. Constantly throughout the book, situations and people are compared to, one of Wagner's operas, which, like they did in that one. He writes a couple of things. I wish they would have done this a little bit more, but they do talk about historic events that occurred during Wagner's lifetime. And a big one was the Franco-Prussian War, and Wagner is just fucking in heaven because he hates the French also. And he writes a couple of things. He writes this thing called To the German Army Before Paris, and he also writes a thing called A Capitulation. And apparently, in a capitulation, he makes fun of the Parisians eating rats. I tried to find that shit on Google. I couldn't find any of it. King Ludwig. I got a note here that says Ludwig wasn't the only one in love with Wagner. Nietzsche was also in love with Wagner. And from what I understand, Nietzsche sort of made a fucking career out of writing about Wagner. But Nietzsche, Nietzsche, when he first met Wagner, he just idolized him. I don't know how long that lasted. I'm going to guess 5-6 years. And then Nietzsche saw the light, and he wrote several books that were very critical. Nietzsche says, all things considered, I would never have survived my youth without Wagnerian music. So he really loved him at first, but then I mean, we've all done that. We meet somebody we like, and then later on we're like, damn. I've got to read this paragraph. And Wagner did become Nietzsche's awakener, who, by subsequently failing to live up to the youth's ideals, dealt him wounds which, though they never healed, yet played a salutary role in his development into one of history's most formidable philosophic writers and thinkers. That's enough. I'm not going to finish that paragraph. That pretty much says it all. Without Wagner, there would have been no Nietzsche. Wagner met Otto von Bismarck. He sat in the same fucking room with the Iron Chancellor. And what does Bismarck say about him? Bismarck says that he had yet to encounter such conceit. Oh, and Wagner composed a march to be played in Philadelphia on America's 100-year anniversary. I didn't bother trying to find it. It's probably shitty. Tchaikovsky was one of Wagner's friends. Brahms was one of Wagner's friends. This is something that Tchaikovsky has wrote. What pride, what overflowing emotions must have welled up at this moment in the heart of that little man who, by his powerful determination and great talent, has defied all obstacles to the final realization of his artistic ideals and audacious beliefs. This is Tchaikovsky wrote that, at the first in Beirut. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but the first festival where they play the ring cycle. Wagner's final break with Nietzsche. There was something I wanted to read. Hopefully that wasn't the page, because I'm not looking for it. Yeah, this is it. No. I've got to read the last sentence here. The Beethoven Symphony, though born with the original sin of classic form, was yet deemed worthy of redemption by Senta-Wagner, who, strengthened by thoughts of Shakespeare's untrammeled genius and armed with motivic techniques for swimming through heavy seas of tone, selflessly plunged into the amorphous floods of the romantic orchestral style. I think I marked that paragraph just to give you an idea of how this was written. This is King Ludwig of Bavaria on America. He says, "In that obstinate American soil your roses cannot prosper. There where mammon is lord of selfishness and lovelessness." The Europeans did not care for America. There's some really good stuff that Talleyrand wrote about America, and it's the greed. That's what they didn't like. Wagner turns into a vegetarian. Wagner reads Darwin. Where is this? I'm not going to bother trying to find that. Wagner wrote stuff about we shouldn't be experimenting on animals. He was they called him an anti-vivisectionist. Apparently Adolf Hitler was also. I got to read this paragraph, but this is going on way too long. Fucking 15 minutes already. Renoir paints Wagner. and he's chatting with Renoir and Renoir has also left a written impression of the declining master, who engaged him in the silliest conversation in a mixture of German and guttural French, punctuated with expletives, and climaxed by a tirade against the Jews. To make the old man happy, Renoir contributed some derogatory remarks about Meyerbeer. Meyerbeer was a Jewish guy that worked with Wagner. Probably put up with a lot from Wagner. And there was a lot of French sentences in here, a lot of German sentences, even some Latin thrown in, and they didn't always give you the translation. But there's this word. It's all one word, schmackhafter, or schmackhaft. Schmackhaft means tasty, and schmackhafter means tastier. And the one thing about Nietzsche that I couldn't find there was Nietzsche was kind of a sickly guy. And while him and Wagner were still on speaking terms, Wagner must have known who Nietzsche's doctor was. And behind Nietzsche's back, Wagner goes to see his doctor and tells him that the only thing wrong with Nietzsche is he's constantly masturbating. So that was one of the last straws for Nietzsche. Anyways, good book. This one's going on the shelf. I've already started another one. Thank you for watching.